Hi everyone. It's already 5 o'clock and some people are still joining, but let's just start. My name is Dahlia. I'm from Ideas, and today's topic is convergence of AI, machine learning, blockchain, and IoT. And our lovely speaker is Chris Tyler from IBM. But before we jump into the topic, let me just briefly describe what is Ideas, just remind you what we do and why we do that. I hope you can see my screen. IDEAS is International Data Engineering and Science Association. We are a non-profit organization, and our mission is to bridge the gap between academia and industry. So pretty much we're just very enthusiastic about data science, engineering, about machine learning, blockchain, and AI. We started in 2016, and we started in Los Angeles at USC University, and we started to grow. And right now we spread around the country, and we hold a lot of conferences in New York, Boston, Chicago. We'll also have a lot of blockchain-related hackathons and data science-related hackathons. This is our first conference, so-called conference at USC. It was our kickoff of the whole thing that we do. And this is our New York Blockchain Leadership Connect. And this is our Chicago Blockchain Leadership. And this is so-called conference in Pasadena 2017. And this is our well-known 2018, and one is coming in 2019. This one was really big, really huge event, almost 300 and plus speakers, a lot of people enthusiastic about data science. So if you have time in October, November 2019, so don't miss this chance next time. Apart from just conferences, we also have a lot of meetups and at MIT, Harvard, USC, UCLA. So if you find yourself as a student in those universities, don't miss a chance to come. Yeah, so before this, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course you can follow us on YouTube channel. This is a QR code for our YouTube channel. So if you missed any of the webinars, you can go ahead and screen this QR code and find any webinars that you missed. But it's better if you join online so you won't miss fun. So let me just now introduce our speaker for today. So his name is Chris Tyler. He has been working for IBM almost 15 years. Right now he's helping to grow startups and leverage technology related to data science, machine learning, IoT, and AI. He's a very experienced at IBM, I would say, top manager. I'm sorry, I'm really excited about everything. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for doing this. We're really excited for your presentation. So let me just pass the whole presentation to you.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
And let me share. So,
yeah,
are you able to
perfect.
see that?
Yeah,
okay.
I can see that. Great.
Wonderful. Okay, so welcome everybody. And it was nice to see some of those pictures that Dahlia went through. I think I was in a few of those. So I've spoken at a few events of Ideas. I was at the LA Convention Center in October. I've been at MIT and Berkeley and a few other places. So always happy to work with the Ideas organization. I think you guys do great work. So what we're going to talk about today, is what I term building smarter, trusted applications, and it's sort of a trend I've been seeing over the last year or two that I've been working with blockchain. I've got a lot of history in analytics and information, or Internet of Things, IoT, as well as machine learning and AI. Right, and I'm starting to see that these are no longer siloed applications. They're actually starting to come together, and we're seeing some applications in the market and things coming to market relatively soon. So I'm going to talk to you today about each one individually, and then start to tell you how I'm seeing these things come together. So let's get started. A little bit about myself. Dahlia Solji. I've got probably over 15 years now working with IBM and their analytics group. and that entire 15 years, I've worked with solutions providers, whether those are ISVs or software as a service, or now recently I'm working with startups. But I talk with them about how do they take our technology and embed that into their solutions, right? So hence the name Embedded Solutions Evangelist, right? And I go around the globe talking to audiences like this in person, on the web, pretty much everywhere I go. I'm talking to people about how they can take advantage of all the technology that IBM has. And, you know, we're one of the leaders in blockchain. We have one of the leading IoT platforms, and we spend, you know, billions of dollars every year in research and development around data science and analytics and machine learning. Myself, I've spent pretty much my entire career, so well over 25 years now, working with large scale systems around analytics and data. My focus is always, how do I generate revenue? How do I build products with analytics and data? And again, so I'm always talking to ISVs about how they can do the same thing. Now, outside work, I like to spend a lot of time outdoors. I am known as the Canyon Man. You can actually find me on the interwebs, right, as canyonmanoutdoors.com. And I have a blog, and I talk to organizations about, you know, getting people outdoors. I'm big about how do I get families outside, hiking, backpacking, fly fishing, and so forth. So I'm equally as excited to talk to people about technology as well as outdoors. So you can hit me up on Twitter, either at Chris A. Tyler if you want to talk business, and at The Canyon Man if you want to talk about backpacking and so forth. And then I'm out on LinkedIn as Chris A. Tyler. So you can follow me, link in with me, so forth. All right. So this concept I have of building smarter, trusted applications and bringing these technologies, blockchain, IoT, machine learning, and analytics. And you'll notice that I didn't use the term AI. We tend to refer to machine learning. AI, you know, can mean more than just machine learning, but we'll talk about the differences that I see in a little bit. But how do we bring these together? But let's, you know, first cover off and kind of level set on, you know, our concept of blockchain and what, you know, how blockchain is being used in the marketplace as an individual technology. You know, I think a lot of people have at least now been exposed somewhat to blockchain, but, you know, it's distributed ledger technology. What does that mean, right? Is I have multiple copies of the data, but they're all kept in sync by a common integrated system, right? So each person or each node within the network can have their own copy of the data, but as soon as they make a change, then everybody else in the network gets notified, right? So the distributed ledger is everybody can have a copy, but we're all going to work off of the same data. And why do people do this? Well, it facilitates trust. You don't have, you know, one company that has their copy of the books that's different than someone else's copy of the books that's different than a third party's copy. We all share the same information. So it builds that trust and transparency. And I mentioned beyond cryptocurrency, even though crypto was the, you know, one of the first and still continues to be one of the leading use cases for blockchain, we see the uses of blockchain well beyond just cryptocurrency, right? And things like international trade finance. We're seeing where third world countries are now able to get at financing options that they didn't have because of things like blockchain, where, you know, organizations outside of their area can actually make funds available to them so that they can build their businesses. I see this. There's a company called Tiger Trade that's working with financing people that are in parts of Africa for that make linen and make things that go into making clothing. And so before, they had a very hard time of getting at resources, financial resources, because of their location and because of just the lack of availability of it. And now through the blockchain, they're able to actually make that available to them. We see blockchain used a lot in supply chain. and you see food safety there as well as the food supply chain, right? And it's because you have multiple participants, different suppliers, different distributors, and in all these intermediaries as part of that supply chain, different steps along the way, and everybody wants to put their transactions into an area where everybody can sort of see where are things at in the supply chain. I think Vish spoke to you a few weeks ago as well about blockchain and supply chain, how those two fit very nicely together. We see it in what's called cross-border payments. So where before it was about a 7 to 10 day process to move money from one country to the next. It was very costly, it's time consuming, and lots of paperwork to make sure that all the sign-offs had occurred in order to move money from one country to another. And we have now, IBM has something called WorldWire, where we can do that in hours as opposed to multiple days. And then we'll talk about this more later, but self-sovereign identity management, where you become the owner of your data, right? So like I said, I'll save that for later. So those are some of the use cases around blockchain as an individual technology. And then I work a lot in Internet of Things, IoT, right? And this is just that interconnectivity of devices, sensors, and systems. And whether you knew it was IoT or not, right? Most of us are using a lot of this technology today, right? You can walk up to your car sometimes, and the key fob, you don't even have to push the button. It just recognizes that you're close to it. It opens the car and can, it sometimes even get things ready for you, move the seat back, set the mirrors, and so forth, right? At home, you see the things like Google Home Hub and the automated homes and so forth. Those are all examples that we see with Internet of Things, where you have these different sensors that can determine when something is either in proximity or as it moves through an environment and so forth, and can make other things happen. Just some use cases that we've probably all been around. You see the autonomous vehicle coming up, right? It has to have all these sensors that tell it there's a car next to it. You'll even see some things with artificial intelligence and machine learning where it knows that the difference between, say, a cone and a human being, right? So it can start to understand the differences between things, right? Smart homes and buildings, right? You see this a lot in the LEED certified buildings, right? Where if someone has not been in a room for a certain amount of time, it actually shuts the lights off. It will set the air conditioner down or up, or do whatever it needs to make sure that the building is operating efficiently and effectively. What we call proactive or predictive maintenance and quality sometimes. We see a lot of, you see it in vehicles, you see it in these large devices or machinery, right? Like excavating equipment. I've seen it in diamond mining and so forth, where you have these multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment, and they're equipped with sensor technology, and they can start to determine if something is about to happen to that piece of equipment, and tell you that you need to take action on this so that it will, so that you can have the longevity of that equipment and reduce the cost of maintenance going forward. So you see it in security and monitoring, and what I call location awareness and offers as well. I don't know if you've seen this, but sometimes you can walk around a mall or walk around a shopping center, and they can, if you've signed up for the service, they will know that you're in the area, and something may pop on your cell phone, right? So these are all examples of, again, Internet of Things as a sort of singular type technology. Now we'll talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, and a lot of the people that I work with, they like the term machine learning only, but because artificial intelligence is really, I can simulate this with just writing computer code, right? I can write code that does a lot of if, then, else, and can make decisions, because artificial intelligence is just getting a computer to simulate natural intelligence. And you see it with things like process automation, robotics, and so forth. And even to some degree, chatbots. I'm actually programming that to take a conversation in a certain direction. Now, a lot of chatbots have actually embedded machine learning, which we'll get to here in a minute. But a lot of the original chatbots were just simply code, right? Things like smart assistants as well that can help you with specific tasks. What we call decision optimization, right, is also a form of artificial intelligence. And this is where, if you think about maybe a manufacturing environment, I have a finite amount of equipment. I have a finite amount of space. I have a finite amount of goods coming into the manufacturing environment, and a finite number of people, and so forth. These are all my constraints. But I want to figure out, okay, tell me what the optimal mix of those things is, so that I can optimize either my production output, or I want to optimize for margin, or I want to optimize for revenue, whatever it is, whatever I'm trying to do, tell me what the optimal mix of using all those things is, so that I can get my desired output, right? And these are all things that just are, they're just using a computer to mimic natural intelligence. So then the evolution of that is now machine learning, where now the computers can start to build the models as they go and learn and adapt the models based on the data that they're seeing. So you see this a lot in visual recognition, where if I've got a model that's been programmed and I give it a picture of a cat, at first it probably, if it's never been trained, it would not have any idea that that's a cat. But as I give it more data and I show it pictures and tell it each of these pictures is a cat, even though I may give it a cat that looks totally different, it can start to understand, oh, I'm 75% sure that that's a cat, or it's not a cat, right? And then if I give it pictures of a dog, it can start to figure out, oh, these are not cats, these are dogs. So I didn't have to program it for that. I just have to feed it enough data so that it can start to understand that. Right? Things like natural language processing. Again, it can learn over time as it consumes more either natural language or documents or something like that, that model can start to learn and adapt based on domain-specific documents that I'm passing, right? My wife works in healthcare. They have a very specific vernacular. If I just take public search data and I try and feed it things that are coming from a doctor as far as an order goes, it's probably not going to be very accurate. But if I provide as training, I provide it information that are previous prescriptions that were filled, previous doctor notes and what that meant and so forth, and I give it the specific vernacular, it will be much more effective. Right? We see it in speech to text, text to speech. And so you see this in Siri. Right? When Siri first came out, Siri probably wasn't as accurate as it is today, but it's starting to learn over time as more people start to use it. And like I mentioned earlier, the autonomous vehicles, when those first came out, they weren't as effective because they hadn't thought through all of the different sort of scenarios. But as they drive them around and they start to put them in different scenarios, it learns and it becomes more effective. And so that's machine learning as opposed to just artificial intelligence. Okay. Finally, I work a lot in analytics, but analytics to different people mean different things. To some people, analytics is just reporting. The way I always look at analytics, it's anything that I need to do around data, whether that's how I get data in, consume that, store that, manage it, govern it, whether that's data that's coming in files, or whether that's real-time streaming data. And then what do I do with that data? Descriptive is what most people think of. They think of reporting and dashboards and so forth. It's a lot of historical rear view mirror type stuff. We look at it as well as predictive analytics, right? I'm taking my what I've learned over time, and I'm applying that to future, right? I'm saying, okay, I think this is going to happen. And then prescriptive is some of that decision optimization that we talked about earlier, where not only is this what I think is going to happen, this is what I think you should do either to make that happen or to avoid it from happening, right? So that's sort of the breadth of analytics that we talk about when we're talking about analytics with companies. So how do we start pulling all this together, right? Because while these things can live as siloed applications and do what they do very well, they become much more effective when they're brought together, right? So give you an example, even though I've got this data stored in my blockchain and it's very secure and everybody can make API calls to see what they want, I don't get the full value of it until I start to run analytics. I start to look at the time series of things that have happened and make sure that all the sign-offs were correct and that this is things followed the right sort of timeline, right? And I can't see that unless I do analytics. You look at things like AI and machine learning and how those fit in with blockchain as well, right? We're seeing it with just the fact of digital identity, making sure that the person or the organization that's coming in, they are who they say they are, right? Using, biometrics and different heuristics and so forth to ensure that those things are in, that people that are coming in, they are who they are, who they say they are. And then you look at things like in food supply chain, you look at things like visual recognition and being able to take a picture of, say, a set of bananas and knowing, that is bananas, that they told me that they're bananas, they're the right size, they're the right color, the right shape, the right quantity, and so forth. I can use visual recognition models to actually start to determine that, and I don't have to have someone visually look at that. You look at IoT and all the sensor stuff, going back to food safety, making sure that the things are held at the right temperature, that they're not being moved too quickly, they're not being dropped, and so forth. We see it in pharmaceuticals as well. There are some pharmaceuticals that have to be kept at a very specific temperature. All that information can be stored on the blockchain, and then when the pharmaceuticals are received, the person receiving it can look on the blockchain and actually see that, oh yes, the temperature, I know that this IoT device that was capturing it, I know all the information about it, I know that it was been certified and it's been maintained and who maintained it and so forth. And all the data getting in there, I know it came from that device because we had the proper security to make sure that the data coming in is coming from a device that we've certified. And then now I've got that history of everything that's happened, and it's coming straight from the IoT device into the blockchain. And you can't do anything on the blockchain or pretty much any of these applications without having some application development, right? So all the things you do with things like Node.js and Java and Python and so forth, you need that application development skills to start to pull all these together. And I mentioned down at the bottom there, public-private cloud platform. It really doesn't matter, right? You look at IoT and there could be some even what we call edge sort of processing going on where at the smart gateway, you're making some determination before it actually gets passed into the cloud. But we work in both public and private clouds, as well as some hybrid form, right? So I'm starting to see all these things coming together. Excuse me, let me get a drink. And so to give you an idea of some areas where these are being brought together, I mentioned it a little bit earlier about digital identity. And in particular, things like self-sovereign identity management. Today, right, you've seen it with Facebook, right, where they owned your data and they were selling it. You see it with things like the credit bureaus. They own your data and they sell that. Whether you know it or not, or that a lot of times your public are your personal health records, right? They're being analyzed, and that information is being sold. Your employment history, your academic history, all this stuff that you put into LinkedIn or you put in somewhere, that is being sold, and you're not making any money off of it, right? So self-sovereign identity management has this idea that you should be in charge of your data. You should be in control of that. And you should be able to give that to who you want, when you want, and take it away when you want, right? And you should be in charge of that and be able to monetize that data, right? And whether that's your personal health records. If I go outside the country and I go, have to go see the doctor, it's going to be very difficult for me to get my personal health records to him. How can we make that easier, right? With regards to your financial health, if I go to purchase a vehicle or purchase a house, there's tons and tons of documents that I have to fill out and proof that I have to give regarding my financial health. Why can't we make that easier with things like blockchain and IoT and so forth? Okay, and down at the bottom, you see things like know your customer. This is a lot in the financial services industry, where someone coming into the bank to set up an account, they need to sort of know everything they can find out about this customer to know, is this customer coming in for good reasons or nefarious reasons? And then you see GDPR in Europe. This is big, and you're going to see it proliferate, I would presume, fairly quickly, where it's the general data protection rights, basically saying that if someone has your information, you have the right to tell them to get rid of it. And not only do they have to prove that they got rid of it, they have to prove within a timely manner. And if they sold it to anyone, they have to prove that that person got rid of it as well. So this digital identity idea is something that's coming to fruition very quickly. And I actually sat through the presentation of a company the other day called MetaMe, where they are realizing that this data, your personal data, is a key resource, and you don't own your data today. So they're giving you this concept of having your own digital wallet where you can manage your own personal data, and meanwhile providing a marketplace where you can start to sell that. They also provide things to, say, their customers where they may have AI or machine learning models and so forth. And if you want to put your data into that, you can actually be paid for that, right? So it's this concept of now you own your data and you can sell and monetize your own data. Food safety, right? This is a big area that we're working in, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. But the idea is, and I love the quote from Michael Palin, right? I'm a huge Monty Python fan, but all he asked of his food is that it didn't harm him, right? And we see this, things like I mentioned, visual recognition, of being able to take a picture or some sort of image of the food moving through a food supply chain and make some determination. Is that what they say it is? Is it good quality? Is it the specific ripeness, or is it, is there something wrong with it? We see things like geospatial analysis, where as things are moving through the food supply chain, did they go outside the bounds of where they were supposed to go, right? You see, I'm sure if you've flown around the globe at any time, there's certain things that you can and cannot bring into certain countries, right? And geospatial analysis can help understand where your food has been as it moved through this food supply chain. And a lot of this is done with IoT sensors. And, one of the things that I'm learning as, most of this food goes across the ocean. Well, when things are out in the middle of the ocean, there's no network. There is no Wi-Fi. There is no, there's satellite communication, but it's very costly. So we're having to come up with unique ways to sort of track things while they're out in the middle of the ocean. Then you look at the things with blockchain regarding time series analysis. And now you can start to see, okay, this is the pattern of behavior that's supposed to happen, right? It's supposed to go from here, point A to point B to point C to point D. And this is the time frame in which that's supposed to happen. And now, as it's happening, can you determine, did it actually happen the way it was supposed to? We're also using things like weather data. So we're bringing in additional data to determine, you know, is there something that could delay this when it gets to port or before it gets to port? Is there something that's going to cause this shipment to go around a storm that could cause the food to spoil because it's taking too long to get in, whatever. So these are all things that we see around food safety. And IBM has actually created an application called IBM Food Trust. If you have heard any of this, right, we worked with Walmart, and Walmart had an issue where they had a group of, or a set of mangoes, and one of their food safety executives took it to some of the heads of product management and supply chain and so forth, and set it down on the table, said, I want to know where this has been through its entire supply chain. And it took them about 7 to 8 days to come back with all the information. Because if you think about it, all the different systems that were within the supply chain, they had to go in each one and query and try and figure out, okay, where did this specific set of mangoes, where did they go, blah, blah. And it, like I said, it took 7 to 8 days. So that's unacceptable. And you see it like with the romaine lettuce, you see it with, I saw it back in 2006, I think, with spinach. You've seen it with eggs, a lot of things. Because they can't isolate the tainted food down to a specific set, they just pull everything off the shelf. It's very costly. It creates a lot of food waste unnecessarily. And so we worked with Walmart to create this blockchain application called the IBM Food Trust. We have multiple suppliers that are a part of this as well. And now with this technology, Walmart can do that exact same exercise. They can say, where has this set of mangoes been from when it came out of the ground to now? And they can find all that information out in 2 seconds or less. So, and they can be much more targeted with things like food recalls. They can, instead of going and just pulling everything off of every shelf of every store, they can get very targeted, and they can only pull the things that need to be pulled off the shelf. So that's a little bit about Food Trust. Then, you know, I work a lot in financial markets, and you see things like speech to text, where I may be able to speak an order someday, and instead of me having to call my broker to have that order processed, right? It could use analytics to not only understand that, yes, this is the order that Chris placed, but because it can analyze my voice, knows that, yes, that's also, I determined that that's Chris. And maybe I have some spoken phrase that it compares that to. But we see a lot of this, and you even see it with some chatbots where I'm asking a financial analyst questions, and it's not actually a human, but it's taking my spoken word and translating that to text, making some determination with natural language processing, and coming back and answering my questions, right? We see a lot with things, especially with regards to compliance risk analysis. They're looking at things like anomaly detection, where, you know, and I even see this with blockchain as well, but you just taking a look at financial transactions and looking and trying to determine, is there something that doesn't look quite right? Right? And if you don't know about anomaly detection, it does exactly that. I give it a set of features of my data, give it a bunch of transactions, and tell it, just go try and find something that doesn't look quite right, right? And they're looking for things like, is there maybe a particular broker that's working with a particular customer around a specific set of stocks and so forth, and trying to determine, is something funny going on, right? And that's where, we start to see it even in blockchain, of looking at things like the history of the block transactions that come in and trying to see, is there something that doesn't look quite right? I mentioned earlier the cross-border payments. So we're seeing a lot of that in the financial markets where all these technologies are starting to come together. And give me an example in the financial markets, right? So H&R Block, who I do use for my taxes, right? I don't know if you've ever used their service, right? I used to work for them as well, and there's a lot of turnover in the tax preparers, and not only that, but they only really work like 3 to 4 months out of the year, and then they go away and they come back, and the tax code's constantly changing. And so the things between turnover and just keeping up with the changes, it's very difficult. So they're using some of our Watson machine learning to help those tax preparers as they're going through, to make sure that they're finding the right credits and the right deductions and so forth, and allow those tax preparers to ask questions. And I put there that the current tax code is 74,000 pages long. So, and again, there are changes every year. Trying to keep up with that is very difficult. So they're using some of the machine learning capabilities to train models on their tax code every year. They can answer, these models can answer thousands of tax related questions, and it understands the context, and it can interpret and actually suggest things to me based on that context. And now you're starting to see it where for some of my children, I'll actually do their taxes online, and I don't know anything about the current tax code, so it will actually coach me along as well. So anyway, so those are some examples that I see out in the market. So I'm going to stop there for real quick and just kind of take a breather. I'm going to cover off now just some programs to help you get started. But before I do that, Dahlia, I wanted to see if there's any questions that we can get to before.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions from Alexandra. Can you expand Food Trust to include where particular product falls, then can target, so that it can target to the purchasers?
Where it falls?
Yeah, where exactly the product is sold. Is it possible to include this in Food Trust?
So yeah, Food Trust goes farm to basically where it's been purchased, right? So now they may eventually, they're working on actually taking that to where if I have an app on my smartphone, be able to take a picture of, say, the UPC or some code on there and trace that all the way back to everywhere that thing has been. We're also seeing outside of Food Trust, I've got a partner that I'm working with that's doing this with fine wine, right? There's a scanner on barcode scanner on the back of these fine wine, and I can snap a picture of that, and it will tell me, when the grapes were harvested, how long did it sit in the barrels, and how did it wind up in that bottle, who did it, when did it happen, and how long did it take to get here to where I bought it.
So does it follow to the end consumer purchase, or it's just to the Walmart?
Yes.
So
the end consumer, right, is the goal. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There's also a comment, so you can use SBINS data to follow through with end consumers. This is just a comment from Alexandra.
Sorry, I didn't.
Okay, so Alexandra says that there's also SBINS data to follow through with end consumers. It's pronounced like SPINS.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, another question is there any blockchain application for construction industry?
Oh, let's see. Trying to think. I know I've done some stuff with IoT in the construction industry. Again, and also a lot of that has to do with just, I give you an example, one that I did work on where they had cameras around the construction site, and they're making sure that everybody had their hard hats on, that they were wearing their high colored vest. They also had sensors on the person's identification tag that would make sure that only authorized people would come into the building and so forth. But as far as construction goes, I don't know one in particular, but I could do some digging maybe and see if I could find out. You think about even just real estate transactions, right? I know there's a lot of talk about, just all the things, all the documents that go around a construction project, right? That, it might make a good use case for blockchain, of being able to make sure that all the sign-offs that happen, that the people that are working on the project have been verified, and we know that they're authorized to work on this project. They have the credentials and so forth. So I could see where a good use case for that.
Okay, thank you, Jong-Hoon. Thank you for the question. Another question is from Kunal. Can you provide more examples how combination of AI, machine learning, and blockchain can be used in healthcare?
Yeah, so in sorry, in healthcare, I'm working with some around like the clinical trial business, where there's several things that have to happen with regards to a clinical trial. And from when the pharmaceutical company decides, okay, we're going to take this drug to market, we need to get the right physicians, we need to get the right patients, and we need to get the right clinics to run this clinical trial. And so part of the matching of this particular drug to, what is it, which symptoms and which diseases is it trying to cure, you can do some machine learning models to determine out of all these doctors that we have within this network, which ones would match up best to run this clinical trial, which patients of all the patients that we have, which ones would match up to this the best, right? And then, as far as the blockchain goes, you have to be able to prove that you did everything correctly so that the pharmaceutical company will pay the clinic for running that, right? And so there's a lot of proof and trust and transparency that goes along with making sure that everything that was supposed to be done so that the clinical trial can be deemed successful, it's been done, all the proper sign-offs and so forth. There's also the aspect of cryptocurrency potentially, if there's the payment between all the vendors or all the different participants in the clinical trial. There are IoT capabilities that are needed as well. Like I mentioned earlier with the pharmaceuticals, some of these pharmaceuticals have to be held at a very specific temperature, right, or a temperature range. And if they go outside of that, then it will invalidate the results. So being able to have sensors in the shipment with the pharmaceuticals is very important. And again, making sure that goes on the blockchain so that it can be proven later that, yes, it was held at the right temperature. And you even look outside of the clinical trial, and we see just in healthcare things like the IoT sensors on newborns, that they're taking real-time data and making real-time decisions on the treatment and what they should be doing to these infants in the neonatal intensive care unit up in, I think it's in Toronto or Montreal somewhere. And they're doing all this in real time, pulling sensor data from hundreds of sensors that are in the NICU and trying to make real-time decisions on how to treat these infants.
All right. Kunal, I hope this answered your question. Another question from Christine, going back to Food Trust. Does AI ML have enough flexibility to control what companies look at? So are the companies limited to what Food Trust was intended for, or there's more flexibility?
So yeah, it's a good, kind of a good question. There is security within the Food Trust that only, if I've got two companies that are supplying me mangoes, right? Those two suppliers can't see each other's information, but the person that or the company that they're supplying them to can see across both. So there is some of that security in there. And then outside of Food Trust, right, we're starting to see these network of networks where, you may have another part of the food supply chain that handles some sort of related part of the food supply chain, but it's not something that's covered by Food Supply or Food Trust. They will actually start to connect these networks into the IBM Food Trust, and I've seen a few of those as well. And it could be things like payments. It could be things like, what do you do with the food waste, right? What do you do with it, right? How is it handled? Where was it, how was it disposed of, and so forth. So seen a few things like that. Okay. Does that answer your question?
I hope, Kristen, that's answered your question. Another question, there isn't any analytics being done on the actual blockchain. Is it right? The blockchain is only used to enforce contracts.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point, and typically, yes, right. There are ways that I'm seeing analytics being done directly on the blockchain, but it's really more of the management of the blockchain, right? But the data inside, yeah, right now is pretty much locked away. So what we see, right, and this is very interesting and a good question, is a lot of times they will duplicate what goes on the blockchain is there for the trust and transparency and the proof, but they will mirror that data into an analytical database so that they can start to run the analytics against that. Now I am working, trying to figure out ways to improve that where maybe I don't need to have that duplication of effort, right? That duplication of data. How can we actually analyze the data within the blockchain? There are ways to do it. It's just not very efficient at this point. So it's much more efficient to do that duplication effort. A lot of these blockchains are storing their data in some sort of database, but because it's all encrypted and it's hashed, and you can't really make any sense of it. So, but I would expect that to change sometime in the future. I would imagine in the next 5 years, you'll start to see analytical tools that can start to analyze the data within the blockchain. But great question.
Great. Thank you, Gibran, for the question. Another question from Eduardo. Should startups working on concepts that involve all these technologies considering working with IBM, or it is only when acquiring significant scale?
No, so I'll get to that here in a minute. You can see that I've got a column here specifically for startups, right? And that's my sole responsibility right now, is to actually work with these startups to get them going with IBM technology. And the reason for it, right? The reason I think it's great to work with IBM is you can start small, right? A lot of these AI components, these machine learning components, there's simple API calls that you can make, and you can take advantage of everything that we've done with these Fortune 500 companies, these large companies. We take that, and you as a startup can actually benefit from that. All right. So any other questions, Dahlia?
There's one more question. This is related to construction industry again from Jumbo. So can you please provide some helpful resources for those who are in the construction industry?
Well, I don't work in the construction part. We do have various industry verticals within IBM, and we have a lot of use cases around different industries. I don't know that construction per se is one of those, but if you go out and you just peruse around on IBM's industries page, you might find some stuff. But if you want, link in with me, shoot me some questions, and I'd be willing to do some digging if I can. Like I said, I in the construction world, I see a lot around predictive maintenance and quality, because those pieces of equipment are very expensive, and if they're taken out of commission, it costs a lot of money. And then just being able to verify that everybody on the job site is safe and everybody that is there is supposed to be there. Those are some areas. You also see things around the financial aspects of construction, making sure that everybody's getting paid as they're doing work and so forth. And then, I work in Latin America a lot, and a lot of the people doing work there's a lot of inter-country sort of payments. So this cross-border payments becomes a big issue. So, okay.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you from Yunhun too. So right now we don't have any questions. I think we can move on to the next section.
So last thing is, how do you get started, right? And there's a lot of different areas that you can get started with IBM, and I'll just touch on these 4 main areas, right? So the first is, as students, right, and as early as as early as the 9th grade, we have something called the PTech Academy. This was introduced just I want to say it was 2015, 16, somewhere. It hasn't been that long, right? But we're already in over 100 schools across 4 countries. And it's a bridge, it's a unity of public schools and private partnership. We are one of those private entities, right? IBM is one. There's several others. I think American Airlines and so forth. But they have these PTech academies, and it says grades 9 to 14. Well, you're probably wondering, well, most schools end at 12th grade. Well, it actually continues and gives them, at the end of their graduation, they come out with an associate's degree in some science, technology, engineering, and math. Throughout their time in that PTech Academy, mentors like myself go out and we teach these kids things from industry. And it's just a way that these students are getting, instead of going through a 4-year college, by the time they graduate, in essence, from high school with an extra 2 years, they're ready to go to work. They've been hands-on with IoT, blockchain, machine learning, artificial intelligence, analytics, all this stuff. They've been doing it for 6 years, right? And so we've partnered, like I said, with the public school systems and have built these PTech academies. We have a summit intern program. So anyone that's in college, that it's usually, I think, sophomore and up. But we have a summit intern program, and they actually get some employee training. A lot of the things that we sell with the machine learning and analytics and blockchain and so forth, they're going to get hands-on and start to tie that to business problems, right? And how do they solve those? And we also have a summit hire program, so all of our new hires go through this same training. And it just immerses you into a lot of this technology, and again tries to help you tie it to a business problem, not just learning it to play with the technology, but how does it actually solve problems. So then we talk a little bit about for startups, and I represent a startup with IBM program. It's for companies that are 5 years or younger. They $1 million in revenue in the last 12 months or less. They've never received any IBM credits. They can qualify for $1,000 per month in credits and up to $10,000 per month for 12 months. Also through that, you have access to free training, actually some access to some mentorship and so forth. this program I've been working with for a few months now, and it's a great way. If you're a startup, you meet these criteria, you can start to get to using these things like blockchain, IoT, and some of our machine learning capabilities. I also work with the IBM Blockchain Accelerator. This is a partnership with Columbia University out of New York City. And there's two programs. One is for early stage startups, and the second is for growth stage startups. This is specifically around these companies that are building blockchain-based businesses. And I think it's about a 6-week or more program. Gives them workshops, hands-on mentorship with people in the industry that have been building these types of businesses, and helps them grow and in the beginning can help them build their businesses, right? We do this, I think, about once or twice a year, each one of these programs. Now, if you're a builder, right, someone has fun building things, I've got a link there for IBM Cloud. You can sign up for a IBM Cloud Lite account. It's totally free. You don't even need a credit card. And you get access to a lot of our machine learning and AI and IoT capabilities, a lot of our data and analytics and so forth. Many of our services have free tiers. And so you can play around with those and see what you can build with those. And then, if you want to upgrade that account at some point, you can upgrade it. Okay. We have what's called a cognitive class. They used to call this Cognitive University, but it's free data science and cognitive computing courses. You can go out and you can take these, and you can actually earn badges, which are sort of a certificate that you can post on your LinkedIn, and they're certified that you can prove. I actually had to pass a test, and I actually learned this skill, right? Finally, we have our IBM Developer, which is our developer community. We post out there code patterns and tutorials and courses, and it's all around blockchain, AI, IoT, analytics. We even have things around Node.js, containers, Kubernetes, so forth, right? So you can check that out. It's all free. Go and download them. They're all stored on GitHub. And then finally, for ISVs and solution providers, I also represent the embedded solutions, where if you're going to take a piece of IBM technology, embed it in your solution, and go to market with that, then close that. Then you need to be in an embedded solutions agreement. And I actually work with my partners on that. We create a shared risk reward. So as you are selling your technology that has ours, we both benefit from that, right? You're not, and then we provide things like training, co-marketing programs, and so forth for those embedded solutions partners. And finally, if you want to sell with IBM, we have an IBM marketplace where all of our clients, all of our partners, and all of our sellers have visibility to that. And you can, as an embedded solutions partner, you can actually post your solution out there and get in front of those executives and those decision makers and so forth, and sell your solution to them. We even have the capability, if it's a cloud solution, that will be on our cloud catalog, and our customers and our partners can actually provision, and we can combine the billing of your services with our services so that our customers just pay one bill, they pay it to IBM, and then we flow the revenue over to you. So those are just some of the areas, and I will provide this presentation to the Ideas organization. They'll post it up, and it will have all these links in there for you. So at that, thank you. Anything else, Dahlia?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. We have one more question from Yunhun about for people in construction industry, for example, who do not have any coding or computer science background and experience, how to learn to use blockchain technology and coding.
Okay.
What's your suggestion?
Yeah. So the blockchain, unfortunately, at this point, right, is it's not code intensive, but the smart contracts are actually written in code today, right? But what I would do is there's a couple of classes that are out on that cognitive class that are blockchain essentials, and I think there's a blockchain, there's a couple of blockchain classes that you don't even have to write any code, and you can get certified that you at least understand the concepts and the application of blockchain and where it fits in and how to identify, is this a good use case, and so forth. You can take those and get those certifications out there completely for free.
I hope, Yunhun, this has answered your question. So I guess this is it. The time is up and we have no more questions. We also have a small poll. So if you have time, oh, there is, can you share the link to the meetings? Yeah, we will share the link to the meetings. The link, the YouTube link will be available on our LinkedIn page, and also we will distribute this using newsletters. So, or I'm gonna give you the link to our YouTube channel, so you can go ahead and check the videos there. And do you have any more questions? Oh, I guess this is it. So thank you, Chris. We really appreciate your effort and time today. It was very interesting. It was very helpful, and I think a lot of students, not just students, and people from industry got a lot of information from your presentation. We really hope to get in touch with you for our future conferences, and for all our audience and those who are watching our video online. I hope next time to see you online too, and see you next time then.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.